All right, here's the edited script. Okay, I know the title sounds like I'm spoiled, but hear me out. My brother, 20, got a car for his 18th birthday. Not a new car or anything. It was a 20-year-old Lexus that was in pretty good shape, and he rubbed it in my face for the rest of the time he was in senior year of high school. Compared with my brother, I get just as good of grades as he does. Better in some cases even. I worked my hardest in the hope of fairness. I even did some volunteering cleaning up garbage in my local area. Then my 18th birthday came and went a few weeks ago, and the only thing I wanted, the only thing I was hoping for, was a car. I wasn't expecting something like a new car or a sporty car, just something reliable like my brother got. The party wasn't anything like my brother's 18th. For his 18th, my mom baked the cake herself. It was a delicious layered chocolate pudding cake. I got a sheet cake from the supermarket. For his, they got a DJ. For mine, it was my dad's old boombox with a couple of mixed CDs. We went through whole party, and I figured my parents might have just been waiting to spring a surprise gift on me. But that didn't happen. I asked them as things were wrapping up why there was no car when my brother got one, and they said that they felt like he'd worked harder for it. I asked what he did that I didn't do, because I did all of that and more. My grandma was nearby and heard everything, and then she asked them why as well. She ended up lecturing my parents that she was very, very, very disappointed in them for showing favoritism. Then she proceeded to announce to everyone still there that my parents thought it fine to get their firstborn son a car and DJ, but not their second. And then she even pointed out how much harder my parents tried for my brother's 18th birthday than they had for mine. My uncle was the first to stand up and say something. Then everyone else who'd not left yet, I ended up just walking away and going to my room to sit and think. I got a few "I'm sorry" calls from relatives, and my grandparents convinced me to go out with them for the evening. But when I got back, my parents were pissed and told me I'd shamed them to the whole family. I just walked past them because I didn't want to fight. The next few weeks went by with the silent treatment between us. But then a few days ago, my parents suddenly surprised me with a white '98 Subaru Legacy that runs great. They practically threw the keys and the title in an envelope at me and said to have fun. I got the car, and they're paying for insurance for the next 6 months like they did for my brother. I know a car isn't really a right, but a privilege. So I feel like I've essentially blackmailed my parents into getting me one. Am I the idiot for how all this played out? Now for some additional details. My parents make pretty good money, and also don't go out of their way to live lavishly by choice. They've always been moderate in everything they buy or do. Though if anything is stretching their finances, it's my brother's college tuition. He got a partial scholarship, and my parents are paying the rest. I don't and never intended to ask for the same treatment on that. I want to work and pay my own student loans. Now that I have the car, I'm already looking into getting a part-time job. This also isn't a gender thing, as I'm male like my brother. The bill of sale for the car I got says my parents paid $1,600 for it. My brother's car cost them about $3,000 plus if I remember. But I don't see it as a money issue. I actually really love the Subaru and told my parents so. They did not share my enthusiasm. I also did try to talk about a car with my parents a few times last year, but they always dodged the conversations about the topic. I figured if I talked about it too much, it'd ruin it, and so I stopped. I would have felt like a brat to keep talking about getting an imaginary car, so I learned to just stay silent and hope. I can't go stay with my grandparents because they live in a one-bedroom condo. There isn't enough room for other people. After all their kids grew up, my grandparents decided to downsize to make their eventual retirement easier. Also, my grandparents know all of the details already, and they tell me that I didn't do anything wrong, and we're already planning on confronting my parents quietly over the car issue. But they took the chance to take care of the matter when they heard me asking my parents about it. As for my brother's 18th birthday party, it was held in 2020 during basically the height of the pandemic. Honestly, we shouldn't have had a big party like that at the time, but my parents insisted. As for my brother himself, He barely speaks to me, even before he left for college. He didn't show up for my 18th birthday party, and I figured that's just because he's busy with college, and he's not even in the same state as us anymore. Honestly, I haven't seen or heard from him since Christmas, and even then, the most I got out of him was a mild greeting. I did thank my parents for the car, enthusiastically thanked them even, but they've barely said a word to me after giving me the Subaru. And when I thanked my parents, they brushed me off and just went inside. It kind of gave off the vibe that they were letting a brat play with his new toy, which was pretty upsetting, and one of the reasons I made this post. There was one more thing I forgot to say. I was really hoping to get the car because I literally couldn't get a part-time job without one. We don't live in the city, and we're 10 miles from the nearest public bus stop. I've always had to get rides to go anywhere. Now that I have the Subaru, I intend to look for a part-time after-school job as soon as I can, since it came up in so many messages. And I want to clarify that when I went to talk to my parents after the party, it wasn't in front of the rest of the family. I intentionally spoke with them in another room and was supposed to be out of earshot of everyone else there. But my grandma eavesdropped and then barged in to start lecturing my parents about their actions. And that's what caused the crap storm to start. Now for the update, 5 months later. I hope this helps. I've not logged on to this account in roughly 5 months. So now I can tell you all the rest of what happened before college starts. But before that, there's some things I want to get out of the way from previous commenters and messengers. I literally needed a car because there was no way for me to get a job without one. I had no personal transportation and live over 10 miles from the nearest bus stop. So for those who kept telling me to give the car back because they think I was either too spoiled and to accept life is unfair, or that I shouldn't take handouts, or I shouldn't accept gifts from crappy parents, etc., please just stop. My inbox was so crammed full when I logged back on that it took some time to go through it all. It doesn't really matter anyway, though. I did get a part-time job that later went full-time for the summer after I graduated. But 3 weeks into working part-time, the Subaru blew the head gasket while on the highway at like 45 miles an hour. The temp gauge redlined, and I had to pull over and call for help. My grandparents took a look at the car and found that someone had ran a lot of gasket sealer in it, and it was still in the coolant. The car was basically band-aided back together before my parents bought it, and was then barely hanging on by a thread. It drove great, and I was never pushing the car hard as I'm kinda a slow driver. My parents claimed no prior knowledge of the problem, but their only real reaction was to shrug and say it was karma for making them get me the car in the first place. Well, that was a mistake because my grandparents were right there to witness that, and they tore into my parents like none other. My grandma told me to go wait in my room and let them sort this out. It was 2 hours before I was called back into the living room. My parents were on the couch, and both looked like they'd both been metaphorically hit by a truck. My uncle and 2 other relatives were there now too. My grandparents had gotten it out of them that when they bought the car, they just looked for the cheapest thing they could find close in the area that still ran, and bought it no questions asked. They didn't even bother to inspect the car, let alone properly read the ad for it. My uncle, who knows a thing or two about cars, told me that the engine would basically need to be rebuilt because the head gasket warped the block and it cost more than the car is worth to fix it. I had to call into work and tell them I was unable to make it in because my car was dead. They understood and basically put me on a sort of unpaid leave for the moment. Now, I want to point out that what happens next, I had no involvement with. My grandparents just told me to chill for a while and let them and my parents take care of this. And they did. A few days later, they came back with a 1999 Honda Civic hatchback with 180,000 miles on it. It was white, like my Subaru was, and drives great. It's not all-wheel drive like the Subaru was, but it's great on the road and gets better gas mileage. There was also a list of all recent repairs done to the car, things like a new radiator and stuff. My uncle also went over the car before giving it the okay. I thanked everyone profusely, My parents, though, had all the elation of Ben Stein on Valium. They said very little and just walked away. There wasn't even that vibe they had last time of acting like they were giving a new toy to a brat. If I could put it to words, the way they acted was just pure defeat. The Subaru got resold later for $400 since that was the best we could get for it with the blown head gasket, and that money was put into my savings. That's only one half of what happened, though. You see, when I said I did better in school than my brother, I wasn't kidding. My brother got a 30% scholarship after he finished high school. Well, I got a 50% one, not at the same college, of course, but at one comparably good that was also closer. To say my parents were shocked is an understatement. Of course, they just both looked unhappy as soon as the shock wore off. I decided it wouldn't be a good idea to poke the bear by asking them about it, but my grandma thought otherwise and poked that bear. And I mean really poked it. First, she asked if my parents were happy for me, and they claimed they were, but really didn't show in their attitudes. So my grandparents finally asked what their problem was. Why do they dislike me? Their second son was doing great, and even went above expectations, and they can't be happy about it. Did they want me to fail? Were they hoping I'd fail? What is the deal? My mother looked really upset, and my father couldn't look me in the eyes. They both meekly said they were happy for me, and managed to say they want me to take the world by storm when I go to college. And even said they'll help pay some of my tuition as well, just like they are for my brother. My grandparents both sharply said that they better keep their word, because there should never have been any favoritism, period. I thanked my parents for their help, got a light, if not limp, handshake from my father, and a very stiff hug from my mother. It all felt so forced. I was and still am extremely thankful for the car and the tuition, but my parents just drained the room of all emotion. I ended up asking if my grandparents knew what it was that made my parents act this way. I asked if I was an accidental pregnancy or something, and they gave me the "it's time we told you" look. Well, I'm not adopted like so many asked, but I was unplanned, sort of. You see, my parents wanted both a girl and a boy, but got 2 boys instead. My brother came out as a boy, so my parents were really hoping to get a girl on the next go, and they had a prior agreement to stop after 2 kids. They never got a girl. My grandma told me they refused to find out my gender till after I was born. They were convinced I'd be born female, and they'd bought a lot of baby stuff for a girl, and they didn't get a girl. My grandma said I ended up using all of my brother's hand-me-downs till I was 3 years old, because my parents had bought so much girl stuff in advance that they couldn't use. So I was just a disappointment to them from the time I was born. My grandparents said that they know my parents are screwed up, but they've been the way they are for so long now that there's no point in expecting them to change. Since then, my parents hadn't spoken to me much about college. In fact, they ignore the subject as much as they can. And thanks to some of the warnings I got from people who messaged me making me paranoid, I called the college I've been accepted to and made sure to tell them that if anyone calls or emails pretending to be me, or my parents call trying to say I'm not coming, then to call me for a double or even triple check if anything like that happens. I mean, I kind of doubt my parents would do that sort of thing, especially after everything that's happened. But I felt like playing it safe was the better option, though there was something that I really didn't expect to happen, and that was my brother calling me. He called me out of the blue to talk. He said our grandparents called and told him everything. He told me he was sorry for what happened in his own way, and he hopes that once I'm on my own, I won't need to ever come back. He actually admitted to me that when he finishes college, he's going to stay in the state he's in because he likes it there. Our parents, I do know, actually really want him to come back when he gets his degree, but it looks like that's not happening. I said I don't blame him, and I may do the same. The rest of the conversation was a bit awkward because we aren't really used to speaking to each other much anymore. My grandparents and the rest of the family held a surprise party for me over the weekend, and they made it almost like a repeat of my brother's 18th birthday. There was a DJ and a big chocolate cake my grandma made. I couldn't thank them all enough. My parents attended the party, but they were like wallflowers the entire time. They didn't say or do much, just stayed sitting at a far table in the corner and drank beer quietly. The look of defeat they had was even greater now. I think the party wasn't just to congratulate me, but to also rub in my parents' faces that they should have done better, because the rest of the family have made their disappointment in them clear. They seemed like they wanted to leave the party for a while. Can't say I blame them. They were being humiliated into staying where they were. My grandma said that you're never too old to be taught a lesson in humility. As for my personal life, my part-time job went to full-time after high school, and I've been working hard to build my savings before I leave for college. I made minimum wage, but a job is a job, and I want to leave it with my best effort put in before my 2 weeks' notice are up. I doubt I'm going to be coming back here to make another update. And after my first post, I'm just so tired of all the negative comments. About 95% of the comments on my original post were positive, and I want to thank all of those who had nice things to say. You people rock. But the negative comments were so bad that I found it to be mentally draining. Some of the people who commented such negativity honestly feel like they've got worse issues than me. Lots of projecting, maybe. If anyone had something harsh but constructive to say, that was fine. But some people just raged at me like they were foaming at the mouth. I really don't want more of that. Now for the 2-year update. I've been away for 2 years. And I kinda expected I'd be back to post one last time because my brother went for a 4-year bachelor's degree. Much like I currently am. For those who remember my previous posts, I'm the guy whose parents basically got their butts verbally handed to them by the family for bad favoritism towards my older brother. Crap really hit the fan on my 18th birthday because my parents barely put any effort into it and went all out on my brother's 18th during the pandemic. They even managed to get a DJ for the party. And then they presented him with a car. Well, on my 18th, I got no car or even anything close to a similar party, even though my academic standing was better than my brother's. I basically worked too hard for my parents' approval and never got it. When I asked them why my brother got a car and not me, they claimed my brother worked harder for it, which was later confirmed to be not true when I got a bigger scholarship. My grandma happened to be eavesdropping and laid into my parents. Then she got the rest of the family involved. And for the record, they were planning on getting involved anyway. My grandma just stepped things up right then. But after several family members laid into them, my parents, just to try and save face, bought me a car but treated me like a brat who was getting a new toy when they gave me the keys. It was a late 90s Subaru that I thought was great, but turned out to have a blown head gasket that had barely been holding together with sealer. My parents treated me like I was a brat for wanting equal treatment. And then when the car went bad, their reaction was to apathetically shrug and call it karma, which caused my grandparents to start it all over again with them and caused a family intervention. I got many people messaging me and asking if having a car was really necessary, and that I basically forced my parents into it. I forced nothing, and it would have happened anyway if I didn't ask my parents why. And I really did need the car. I had no way of having a job without one. My parents lived 10 miles from the nearest bus stop. I literally had no way of making money before college without a car. And no, I couldn't get rides. No one was available for that on a daily basis. So many people I talked to here tried to dance around my reasoning to inset their own logic, many of which I felt like were projecting their own problems onto me. And then there were the straight-up trolls and jerks. I don't even want to repeat, let alone remember what they all said to me. But a lot of them kept it up after I got the FA. Not the idiot verdict, like they had an axe to grind. And it really didn't help my mental state at the time. As you can imagine, my family laid into my parents all over again in that family intervention. And by the time they were done, they looked like scolded kids sitting there looking at their feet. The Subaru was sold as junk, and my grandparents essentially forced my parents to buy me a better car, a Honda Civic. And my uncle went over the car with a fine-tooth comb before they bought it. And that time my parents didn't even treat me like a brat. And yes, I still have the Honda, and yes, it still runs just fine. I've kept up with oil changes and the like, no accidents either. I've been a careful driver. The final thing that broke my parents before I left was finding out that I got a better scholarship than my brother. Any excuses they'd previously had to favor my brother so completely were thrown out the window, and were forced to give me words of encouragement I knew they didn't mean. And in wondering why they disliked me so much, I later found out from my grandma why I was treated differently was because my parents had wanted their second child to be a girl. My grandma ended up admitting even more to me later after I left for college. Before I was born, my parents were so convinced that I'd be a girl that they bought a bunch of girl stuff without even checking my gender through ultrasound. Well, I found out from my grandma about a year ago that my mother had tried to raise me like a girl for like the first 6 months of my life. She was putting me in girls' clothes and calling me by a different name. My father enabled it all. I know it's true because my grandma showed me old family photos of me with my brother when I was an infant, and I was wearing pink in all of them. There was even a visible name tag on some of the name my parents wanted for a girl. But once word got out, my parents stopped dressing me as a girl. My grandparents told my mother that trying to raise me as something I wasn't even giving me a choice on whether or not I wanted to be that. And though my family is rather old school, but my grandparents are surprisingly open-minded people, and they put the hammer down on my parents. So the girl treatment stopped. But instead of new clothes, they gave me my brother's hand-me-downs for years, till my grandparents noticed that too and did something about it. Finding out all of this, my grandparents kept my childhood from being far worse than it was, and they never told me until this past couple of years. I am incredibly thankful for them. My mother apparently struggled to call me by my real name for 2 years or so, and because my parents didn't get a girl, they refused to connect with me like they did my brother, the boy they'd actually wanted. And when my grandparents heard I wasn't getting anything new like my brother was, they threatened them to petition for guardianship of me. And they had evidence of the various things I described too. My parents couldn't stand for anything that could become a public scandal. So they stopped with the hand-me-downs and pretended to love me for a while. But as I got older, it degenerated into indifference, and then maybe into hate. I'm not sure. Hate means to still care in some way, but indifference is the actual opposite of love. I just know my parents couldn't accept that their favorite son wasn't the best at everything compared to their unwanted son. And since I moved out, they've barely interacted with family. They threw themselves into work, in part because the rest of the family forced them to contribute to my college, like they did my brother's, but also because to them, working was the only thing that gave them a reason to tell everyone to leave them alone. My grandma suspects they've even slept in their cars a few times to avoid coming home. I only saw my parents at Christmas at my uncle's house for the past couple years, and they barely even spoke to me. Now that I was living my best life away from them, I guess you could say that they'd stopped bothering to act like I was their son. They don't want me anymore after the family humiliation they feel like they'd suffered, even though they know they brought it on themselves, and they've become workaholics that do little else. My grandmother told me my bedroom is basically exactly how I left it on the day I moved out. My parents have not even gone inside, but they kept my brother's room clean and ready for the day he'd finally come back home after college. Well, that didn't happen. They flew out to see him for his graduation and had a big celebration with him. I was not invited to go as well. Not that I could afford it, but my grandparents went along and they gave me the details. My parents were still convinced my brother would be coming back home. And that's when he awkwardly told them he had already secured a job through an internship he'd done the past year, and he'd found an apartment of his own too. My father became furious, and my mother lost her mind crying and begging him to come home. But he refused. You see, this past 2 years, my brother and I have reconnected a bit. He found my Reddit account and called me. He wasn't angry, just wanted to talk. He admitted to me that our parents put him through a lot as well. Our mother absolutely smothered him, especially when I wasn't around. And our father was also quite strict with his expectations. So the fact that I did better than my brother when our parents had invested everything into him just broke them. And now they're extra broken because my brother refused to come home with them. But the way our parents treated my brother is also the reason we stopped connecting as siblings until this past couple of years. He did bully me at times when we were growing up, but that's because being the favorite went to his head. But it was favoritism with strings attached. And when he realized that, he got counseling after moving out. My brother also has a girlfriend he met while in college, and he kept her a secret because he knew our parents wouldn't approve, and they didn't when they found out. Bro blew up at them when my mother referred to his girlfriend that she hadn't even met as an intimacy lover. Bro's girlfriend is in nursing school and a year from graduation herself, and my brother says she's the best. I've never met her, but she sounds wonderful by how he's described her. My grandma told me my mother went so far as to hire a private investigator to find out who my brother's girlfriend was, and was irritated to know that she was squeaky clean and from a good family on the same side politically too. But in her mind, she was the reason my brother wasn't coming back, even though Bro made it clear he decided that before even meeting his girlfriend. My father had basically become stoically silent about it from what I heard. But my mother let it slip to my brother that she'd hired a detective, and my brother gave our parents a piece of his mind. And this led to a whole argument about how they gave him everything, and he was ungrateful for not coming back. But he called them out that being the favored child is abuse too, because they nearly made him like them. It broke my parents to hear that. My brother told our grandparents, and they staged another family intervention, one I was even involved in through video call. My parents tried to not even pay attention to me, but even Bro told them to talk to me. We all told them enough was enough. They have 2 sons, and they needed to start treating us fairly, because they let something as idiotic as not being born the gender they wanted to ruin their love for me from day one. My father hit his breaking point and yelled, "You want us to admit we fucked up?" Well, yeah, we did. What do you want us to fucking do? Time fucking travel. We're paying for part of OP's fucking college too. What more does he fucking want from us? Things ended very poorly in that intervention. My mother cried that she was sorry to me. But even then, I still didn't feel her heart was in it, because she didn't spend much time apologizing to me at all before moving on to my brother through the phone he was video calling from. And she spent a long time crying and apologizing to him, until he told her to go back and actually apologize to me like she meant it. That's when my father grabbed the phone and shut it off. Then he just sat down and told everyone to leave. The last thing my grandparents said to my parents was that they were so disappointed in them, and maybe losing both sons showed them they should never have favored one. Right now, my parents are not on speaking terms with the rest of the family. My grandma heard a rumor they may be planning to move, but they have a paid-off country house and great careers. I feel like they'd be fools to move. But since my brother isn't going back, and I'm likely not either, I suppose it's not really an issue. I kind of doubt they'd welcome me in if I came to visit after the crap that went down. I am still thankful to them for helping to pay for my college. My student loans were significantly reduced thanks to them. But as parents, I think we can all agree they just didn't do a good job. Now for a few important comments. Commenter: parents heavily favored my brother to the point of bankrolling his life and getting him a car. Attempted to cast me aside. Family intervened and forced them to be fair and get me a car too, as well as cover some of my college. My parents only got worse after I left home, and I learned even more crazy crap about how they tried to raise me as a girl from infancy. Then my brother graduated college and told our parents he was not coming back. Our parents lost it. Mother hired an investigator, made things worse. Big family intervention that failed, and now my parents are treating the entire family as being dead to them. Am I the idiot for demanding my fiancé cut ties with his toxic best friend? My fiancé has the biggest heart. would literally give you the shirt, pants, and hat off his body if you asked for it. He's a recovering people pleaser, and I get it because I also used to be a people pleaser. We've been together 5+ years. A few months ago, I started picking up on his best friend making some not-so-nice comments towards me. I'm trying to be vague, but let's just say this friend is the type to read who in the room would be most affected by being picked on, and then he picks and picks and picks on them until they can't take it anymore. Nobody ever really holds him accountable for this, and unfortunately, I have somehow become his favorite target. I tried to put up with these comments, but it started getting really elaborate. The friend would make up lies about me saying things I never said. He once called me in front of all our friends, my fiancé included, just to yell, "You're a bad friend," into the phone, and then hang up. There's so much to it that I can't share because I'm trying to be somewhat anonymous. It started having an effect on me and my mental health, and I ended up having a full breakdown where I told my fiancé how much this was all starting to hurt me. The first time I broke down over this, he said he would talk to his friend about teasing, messing with me less. He then told me his friend was sorry and that he'd be keeping an ear out for any other comments and he'd jump to my defense if it happened again. A few weeks later, I had a second breakdown over all this. The situation itself is hitting a very specific childhood trauma trigger for me, and he admitted that his friend didn't actually apologize. He actually said he was sorry. I was too sensitive to understand his humor. At that point, I told my fiancé my friendship with this person is over, and I want zero contact from here on out, even if it means I have to miss out on events and parties that I'd otherwise love to go to. He agreed with me that all of this is being done with the intention to get a rise out of me, and that even if we tried to get through to this friend, he's so diabolical that we could never fully trust him to not treat me at least a little bit shitty. My fiancé kept asking if this meant he had to quit the project they're working on. I told him I would never tell him he had to because I know how much it means to him. But in all honesty, the fact that this person is treating me so poorly that I'm having physical stress reactions isn't enough for him to want to cut this person off does hurt a lot. The fact that it isn't a deal breaker for him is probably always going to sting a little. He's not confrontational at all, and I always knew that. But it's not about confrontation. It's about standing in my corner, and I can't spend the rest of my life with someone who isn't in my corner. This friend is getting married to my best friend in a few months, and we're both supposed to be in the wedding, but I really have no clue how. I get a literal knot in my stomach anytime his name is even mentioned now. I have seen this friend one time since all of this came to a head, and he was so over-the-top nice to me that it came off as cocky. I had the second breakdown a few days afterwards because I realized I'm possibly going to spend the rest of my life on edge and on guard anytime this person is even somewhat in my vicinity, even if they aren't actively messing with me. I don't know how to come to terms with the fact that my fiancé was willing to lie to me on his shitty friend's behalf, but he's not willing to stand in my corner against him. I think it'll always hurt. This guy was supposed to be the best man in our wedding, and as a result, we haven't been talking much about wedding plans. I think if he's still planning on this friend being in our wedding, I may have to call it off for my own sanity, and that sucks so bad. This is eating me alive. I love my fiancé so much. I love his big heart and the way he loves with all of it. But he loves some truly wretched people, and I don't know if he'll enforce any boundaries with those people before the lack of boundaries becomes too much for me to handle. I'm just hurt and hurting, and I just want whatever outcome to play out so I can stop feeling so guilty and awful all the time. Now for a few important comments. When asked if her fiancé defended her in any way, not necessarily. He's non-confrontational, but he knows the behavior isn't sustainable. He agrees with me that this friend is awful with the intention of being awful. They have a project they've been a part of together for over a decade, and it means the universe to him. And that's the biggest factor in all of this. He'd more than likely have to give that up. This entire situation is dog shoot, and there are zero winners except for the jerk. When asked what her best friend says about this behavior, I have my own feelings towards what she's going through. I think she's being love-bombed and gaslit, and I've seen some proof of it with my own eyes. She was there for the bad friend comment and kind of defended him. I know she's so love-struck that she's probably going to choose him, and it unalives me, but I'm trying really hard to step back in a way that doesn't totally burn my bridge with her in the end. When he gets that ring on her finger, I have a feeling he will be a different man to her, and she'll need support. I'll be there when she needs me. When told, she should walk away. Don't think I'm ready to make my peace with this comment quite yet, but I hear it and I'm trying. Right before I met my fiancé, I had just cut out a vast majority of people, including one of my closest friends and a blood relative, for making me feel the same shitty small way my fiancé's friend makes me feel. It's so much harder to burn those rotten bridges when they're not yours to burn. And that's a lot easier to say when you have no stakes in this, my guy. I'm in love with my partner, and I know that this is eating him up just as much as it is me. Trust me when I say he holds himself accountable for his role in this, and we've had many in-depth conversations about how his friend will forever be this way, so long as everybody in his life enables him to be. It's hard to cut someone off even when they deserve it. I'm trying to show my fiancé as much grace as I can, because I know how hard it is to give up on someone you always hoped would grow out of their awful behaviors. When asked if there's any unresolved conflicts, no, my friend and I haven't ever really had any conflict. Me and her were hanging at my place while our partners got ready to head to hers, and they ding-dong ditched us twice. I heard the door a third time and ignored it because I assumed it was them again. And then the jerk called me, speakerphone from my friend's phone, and told me it was a mutual friend that lived in the building and was looking for them for support. I tried to jokingly call them out for ding-dong ditching, but that was when he yelled, "You're a bad friend," into the phone and hung up. I was really embarrassingly distraught by this and expressed how it was affecting me and my friend, left an hour or two later after we sat in silence. I found out later from my fiancé that all our mutual friends, including him, were in the car and heard that conversation, and everyone felt tense, but nobody said anything to him. It wasn't a joke and wasn't taken as a joke by anyone involved, not just me. After the friend who was knocking on the door went to find them, the jerk called me just to make me feel bad for not opening the door. I could hear the friend that knocked saying, "Hey man, not a big deal, it's fine," real quiet in the background, but no one else spoke up. Trust me, I know these examples seem like they shouldn't be getting to me, but this guy is poking every spot he can on me until he finds one that gives him a reaction, and then he digs and digs. It's hard not to be hurt-triggered when his literal intention is so hurt-trigger me. I know this isn't going to go on much longer. Never thought I'd actually update this account out of sheer ducking embarrassment, but I wanted to share this for those who encouraged me to put myself first. I want you all to know my partner absolutely came through and protected me in this. We spent all this time since my last post up until last week communicating and trying to find a resolution and walking through how it got this bad. He took a lot of accountability for that. This is not a case of me giving in. He understands fully that this has only got so bad because it's never been handled correctly, and he had a major hand in that. There were so many more layers to this than a Reddit post ever could have conveyed. The bottom line is we are closer than ever, and after a lot of talking, we decided on my partner sending a firm but not unkind message to his friend, explaining the behaviors, explaining that they were hurting his partner, and that it needed to stop. He asked to write up the first draft, and we could go over it together to try to perfect it. Reddit, please know the first draft my partner wrote was so spot on what I needed to read that it instantly shifted us into us versus the problem mode when we'd been stuck butting heads for weeks. He laid everything out so clearly and in ways that we hadn't discussed, so I know it came from him. We had to tone down a lot of the big emotions. We really, truly gave the message its best shot to address the situation without being hostile. We knew the response would be bad no matter what, but I don't think anything could have freaking prepared us. This man went full scorched earth and blew up everything almost immediately. He insulted my partner. He told him these events didn't happen the way I claim they do. He demanded they meet up alone with a mediator. He even threatened to reach out to my partner's parents to fill them in, which is probably the moment we stopped taking his responses seriously. All of us are almost in our 30s. If once wasn't enough, he threatened it twice. We actually had to call them and warn them that he would be showing up at their place later this week and not to open the door. There's still a good chance he'll attempt it. We stayed respectful throughout all of this, which I feel good about. We didn't stoop to his level. We didn't insult anyone. We asked for basic human respect, and somehow it blew up spectacularly. In the end, we both received a massive wall of text from my now ex-best friend, fully backing up her man and telling her side of the story, which is so insanely far off from what actually happened that all I can do is laugh. We've been shifting from crying to being dumbstruck to just straight up laughing because of the absurdity. I went into this thinking she was brainwashed, but it turns out I was wrong. They're a perfect match. I wish them all the best. I am sending them one last message, setting the record straight, which my partner and I decided together was the best approach, apart from just ghosting, before moving on from this entirely. I'm going to make it very clear this is done, zero contact indefinitely, and I will never look back. My partner and I both deserve way better friends, and we both see that so clearly now. I am so ducking. Glad I learned my friend's true colors before we dropped $800 on a hotel for their wedding. Thank you to everyone who was kind. Not only did I put myself first in the end, but my partner did too. We're going to take this week in stride and process it all, grieve the friendships we once thought were forever, and at the end of the week, we have a conveniently timed vacation to my partner's family cottage. I think we're going to come out of this stronger because we already feel it. Again, thank you to those who had something productive to say, and I've made my peace with all the rest. I guess if the guy does something else outlandish, maybe I'll update. But for now, this chapter is closed and I'm so ready for it to start collecting dust. Now for a few important comments. When told victims of abusers do a 180 in their behavior to explain why her best friend is acting the way she is and chose the ex-friend's side, I definitely went into this thinking exactly what you just laid out. But I refused to set myself on fire to keep her warm. And the shoot she said in her message about my partner is irredeemable. She can never be a part of our lives again after what was said, out of respect for me and my partner, even if any part of me wanted to hold out hope for her. I hope this is a wake-up call for her, but it won't be me on the other line. Appreciate you and your kind words, friend. This has been hell, but I think we're both just glad to have an outcome. I'll always have love for her, but it will be from a very large distance. And even if by some miracle we reconnect, we will never be as close as we once were, without some intense conversations and a lot of growth. Maybe not even then. I don't see that being the case for a very long time. I've made my peace with that. When asked how the fiancé is handling the business with the ex-friend, as well as he can, he stepped down. He is going to find another project eventually. I know it. This has been so impossibly hard on both of us, but I know it's hitting him a bit more than me right now, and I'm making sure to prioritize him and remind him he can feel that pain and mourn what was. And it's not an insult to me at all, if that makes sense. I know what this meant to him. He did give it up. I'm so sad he had to, but I'm grateful to him for putting his foot down. He's going to be okay, just needs some time to grieve and process. Am I the idiot for demanding $1 million after catching my colleague naked in my office? I know this sounds bad, but please reserve judgment until you read my story. I, female 35, am a Moroccan living and working in the US. I work for a big corporation with worldwide locations. When I started working, there was a colleague of mine, 37, male, who always made jokes about being in love with me, etc. I knew these weren't just jokes, but his way of telling me he was interested. I don't shoot where I eat, so I just ignored it. He then started calling me his almond eye. I always corrected him and told him to call me by my name. I told him if he wouldn't stop, I would call him Banana Nose. Listen, I don't know why I said that, because his nose is normal. It's just something that came to my mind. He laughed it off, but never called me that again. Since 2 months ago, we have a new colleague, 36, male. I was working from home the first 2 days he started. When I met him, he was very distant and acted as if he didn't like me. Don't get me wrong, I'm a very nice person, so for me, this was weird. But I respected him and his space, so I didn't make an effort to see what was going on. Last week, I discovered he made a huge mistake. I can't go into details about what because you would guess the corporation, but it was a big one. Even though he acted like a jerk to me, I didn't want him to get into trouble, so I stayed in the office with him until past midnight to solve the issue. And I never reported it. But then, when I got up to leave, he asked me to wait because he wanted to talk to me. He asked me why I hated him so much. My flabber was gasted. I asked him what he meant because, in my opinion, he was the butt. He started telling me that the first day he got here, he was mentored by Banana Nose. And Banana Nose told him, watch out for her because she is Muslim and has told everyone over and over again that gay people should be banned. First, sir, I came from Morocco to work here. Who the hell am I to want to ban someone? Secondly, my religion teaches me to accept and respect everyone. New guy went on to say that he had doubts after tonight because I could have fed him to the wolves, but instead helped him out. But then came the worst part. New guy told me that Banana Nose goes into my office when I work from home and, get this, sits naked on my chair to punish me for being a prude. I asked New guy to not tell anyone what he told me, and now I want to get a hidden camera and install it in my office. I want to first ask HR if it's not against office policy, but yeah, I definitely want to catch his butt, literally. Would I be the jerk if I did that? Update. Well, it is very nice meeting you all. I have never in my life read so many ideas to make someone's butt itch or hurt, the things we can achieve if we just work together. I had a talk with HR. I requested an urgent meeting. I didn't tell them everything because I know what they would do. They would investigate and then come back with, it's just a rumor. Banana Nose is very loved, and I don't want to put New guy in a bad place. So I told them I'm afraid someone might be sneaking into my office because all my stuff gets misplaced. Since I have a higher position at this company, they took it real seriously real fast. So, camera is in its place, and I will be working from home the next couple of days. Update 2. Hey everyone, I guess thanks for being curious and creative. Before I get to the update, I would like to explain where my office is and how Banana Nose was able to do what he did. My office is at the end of the hall. The only room that's facing my office is a utility room/supply closet. We all have offices on the same floor. And with we, I mean the members of our team. I know it might seem naive of me, but I never questioned New guy. I've never told him anything about how Banana Nose treats me and how he calls me a prude. So for him to make that leap seemed excessive. Now for the update. Today was my first day working from home since the cameras were placed. After working for a few hours, I got a call from HR to come to work. My heart was beating so fast and I literally can't remember how I got there. The nerves were eating at me. I got to the HR department, which is one floor above us, and I noticed everyone staring at me. The head of the department was sitting in a room with a couple of other people. They started talking. I couldn't listen. Things like, we as a company, blah, blah, blah. I stopped them and said I couldn't bear listening to a TED Talk and I wanted to know what was going on. Last night, when I already went home and the camera was installed for maybe an hour, Banana Nose entered my office. HR asked me if I wanted to see the video or if I just wanted them to explain what happened. I told them I definitely wanted to see the video. I will first start by saying what I saw objectively. Banana Nose entered my office, and the door behind him was still open. He looked over his shoulder, and it looked like he was talking to someone while taking his pants off. Then it happened. He sat on my chair, butt-ass naked. He took some candy from my desk and started dancing on my chair, rubbing his butt in my chair's DNA. I got sick to my stomach. He then took my pens one by one and licked them. It looked like he was still talking. There was no sound, so I wasn't sure. Then the worst thing happened. 2 years ago, I lost my 7-year-old niece to cancer. On my desk is a picture of her and me the last time we got to hug. So you can clearly see it's not only a child, but a sick one. This evil man rubbed his weenie all over my picture frame and laughed so hard. He took out his phone, made a call, and then left. I started crying like a baby. I feel violated, I feel used, I feel unsafe. HR guy was talking, but I didn't hear anything. I saw myself in the reflection of the window, and I stopped, wiped away my tears, and asked what the next steps are. HR said Banana Nose was asked to come in later, and they would fire him on the spot. It seemed to me like they thought that was enough for me. I told them firing him is step one. I wanted to know who he was talking to and demanded to see the security tapes for the hallway. You can't see into my office on these tapes, but I know for a fact you can see who is standing in the hall. HR accepted my request and asked security for the tapes. It takes some time, but they expect to get it sometime tomorrow. For now, I feel unsafe everywhere I go. When I got in my car, all I could think about was maybe he was in my car. Maybe he was in my home. I know that sounds crazy, but I feel crazy. I will do my best to update you all. For now, I don't know what I need yet. Thank you all. Update 3, maybe final update. First, I want to thank everyone. Your support and kind words helped me when I couldn't sleep. Having this feeling of being alone, may it come back to you to benefit your lives, each one of you. I don't know where to start. Forgive my brain giving up on me. It has been a lot. I have viewed the tapes, and what I saw was, I don't know. It was clear he was talking to someone. I too thought it could be New Guy, but it wasn't. New Guy was seen on tape at the beginning of the hall, turning his back and leaving. Banana Nose was giving a show in my office for 4 of my coworkers. 1 male, 2 female. 2 of them I trained. All 3 of them I helped when they made many, many mistakes. They stood by the door while he danced and filmed him. One of the females started to fist pump. It was disgusting. Before going to HR to view the tape, I did my research. I read in my contract that when there is a conflict of serious nature that can't be solved, that it needs to be taken to the board for review and judgment. I knew that if I asked for them all to be fired, that it wouldn't be a problem. Because like I said, many, many mistakes. So I came up with a different idea. I asked for a compensation from the firm and all parties involved of $1 million per person. I know, ridiculous. Ridiculous enough to get me in front of the board. To get them in front of the board. And I can't wait to show these tapes in front of 11 rich old men and 1 female, who all have a lot of influence in our field of business. But most of all, I can't wait to look them in the eye and ask them why. I know their answer wouldn't change anything, but it would give away who they truly are. Banana Nose isn't fired yet. When I got home after our meeting, HR guy told me they want to wait until they have the full story, so nothing was unanswered. After today, I asked them not to fire him because the board meeting would be useless, and if he quits, he will lose all his benefits. So this way, he has little choice but to show up to the meeting where I will do my dance. I don't know if I'll stay at this company even though I love to work here, because I can't believe that there is any way where it would be possible for New Guy to know this info and all my other colleagues not. Yesterday, I drove to New Guy's house. I told him I never mentioned his name. I want him to have peace and not be afraid that other people will act out against him as some sort of vengeance. His secret is safe with me. Some people ask me what I would do if someone read this from work. Let me say it like this. I work with a bunch of nerds. Not the good kind that's on Reddit, but the bad kind that thinks TMZ is what keeps you up to date. They use words like whatever. I bet you can picture them now. And if they do show up here and read all of this, so be it. I couldn't cope without all of you. I have no family here, and I thought my coworkers were my friends. I guess we all make mistakes. Again, thank you all for everything. I kind of love you guys. Just make sure you never say whatever. The finale. Dear Comfies, an hour ago I got the news that everyone involved quit their job. They got their notice that they have to appear in front of the board, and they didn't want that. By everyone involved, I also mean one other person that was not on the tape, but knew of it and was involved on different occasions. This was something that happened frequently. When they first had to come to HR and watch the tapes, they said it was just a joke that got out of hand. One of them even tried to say that I knew of it. They wanted to first keep their job and asked for a group session to work things out. But when HR said there would be a board meeting, they resigned the next day. As for me, I handed in my notice, but this wasn't accepted. The company offered me a better paying job in a different location. They will help me with relocation and everything. I'm glad that I got this chance. Since I have a more senior position, I need a well-rounded, trustworthy assistant. I asked for New Guy, they agreed with it, and New Guy was very excited. Our relocation is closer at his boyfriend's house, and I'm glad that I don't have to leave him behind at a toxic environment. I guess this is my finale update. I decided not to sue. I don't ever want to think about what he did ever again, and I don't want to put my energy towards this kind of toxicity. And I know one thing for certain, you get what you give. Thank you all for your loving messages. I wish nothing but the best for all of you. Now, for a few important comments. Commenter Inkblot101 said, "There's no both sides of the story for HR to get here. That video pretty much requires immediate termination. Either you have excellent grounds for a very big lawsuit, or this is a creative writing project." Then OP replied, "It wasn't about the both stories." He explained that he wanted to first know who was in the hallway so he would know if there were executives involved. I guess we will never know if there were. This definitely isn't a project or whatever. This is my life right now. I can't sleep, can't eat. I keep going over every interaction I ever had with them, trying to think of something I could have done to deserve this. I have nightmares of Banana Nose poisoning my food or standing by my bed. Yesterday I dreamt he was at my niece's grave, dancing on her. Thoughts like, maybe he did something to the brakes of my car, or maybe he is hiding somewhere in my house, keep popping up. It's crazy. It's crazy that I had a good life here. I was happy, felt safe, and now everything changed.